One of the interesting things about being out in an environment like this is when you're looking around, you see all these different ways in which you could understand perhaps life in 4 dimensions. Now this is something that I've picked up on my walk around Kinchigo National Park. And what I'm going to talk about is demonstrating, say, my flow of thought when I'm looking at a branch and how do I think about it. I'm not going to talk about science, exact science. I'm not a scientist. I'm not going to give you a lecture in a particular field of science. I'm only going to be talking about visual metaphors for understanding more about the world in 4 dimensions and how it relates to the world in 3 dimensions. The 4th dimension is the dimension of time. So I'm particularly interested in thinking about species or groups of species, say genus, as it moves through time. So let's look at this for example. This point here, this is interesting because what I see here is biomass. What that means is the number of individuals, there's a large number of individuals in the, we'll say this particular species, and time's going in this direction. So you can see this is our first evidence of, say, this species. We don't know anything about its ancestry beyond this point. It's lost in deep time, and you can see it's grown somewhat here and here. So it looks like it's really quite successful. It's adapted to its environment and it's going forth and multiplying. Now if we move it down slightly, so more time has passed, it becomes more interesting. It's diverged off into these 2 groups. So what's happened here? That's another thought experiment. Perhaps what's happened here is that a continent has split into 2 separate continents. Say the remnants of Gondwana when Australia broke away from Antarctica, or perhaps the Rift Valley between South America and Africa, which is where it's believed in that Rift Valley that the first flowering plants evolved. Who knows? Anyway, it's broken off into these 2 groups, and now we're witnessing what I have heard is called homeostasis. We're witnessing it in 4 dimensions. What that means is that there hasn't really been any changes, so to speak. This species has not evolved into a myriad of species. There's been no reason to do that. The climate, this is telling me, has remained the same through time, as these 2 groups have travelled through time. So the climatic conditions, perhaps, during this period of time, this long period of time, stayed quite similar. Now moving along further, something's happened here. It's diverged. There's been pressures in the environment. Something's happened in the environment, and you can see this species has broken off into a number of different species, and it happens more and more. These, I believe, are called dendroids. If we talk about dendroids in regards to a book written by Daniel C. Dennett, I first read about dendroids in that book. We could see these groups are breaking off into these different groups all the time. And so again, it happens here, but later on, at another point. So there's a pressure in this population, it's diversifying into a range of different species. But all in all, this is a plant of some sort, and it's really interesting how when I'm walking through a landscape, at least, I find this kind of structure fascinating. And the different plants are challenging in different ways. Okay, what else can they tell me about evolution and the nature of mapping out a species or a group of species in 4 dimensions through time? And further than that, if we look out at this environment, we can see we're actually, in a way, looking at the tree of life in 3 dimensions. This is one life. All of this is one life through time. And there are varieties, points of difference between this one life, and we call them species or genus or the like. We are now looking at the tree of life in 3 dimensions. In 4 dimensions, It has shapes like this.